Hi, everyone. This is Margaret Manning with lifeafterdeath.com. Lifeafterdeath.com is a community of people who are interested in the topic of life after death, reincarnation, near-death experience, and who are just searching for answers to these questions that are so mysterious to most of us. Now, we bring in experts to chat with us about these topics based on their own experience, and I have two amazing guests today, Dr. Eben Alexander and Karen Newell. Now, Dr. Alexander is a medical doctor. He's a surgeon who has been a scientist all his life, but he had a personal experience of a near-death experience that took him to a place where he rediscovered this definition of consciousness. And Karen is working with sound acoustics and other sound meditation techniques to help people experience that same level of consciousness and to go inside themselves to grow. And the two of them are complementary in their goal to make this world a better place. So I'm so excited to have you both here. Thank you for being here.
Margaret, thanks for having us. Great to be here.
Yes, nice to be chatting.
Well, what I love about the two of you is that you are life partners and you are collaborators on a book, which is, you know the name of it and I don't. It's called Living a Mindful in a Mindful Universe. And I think that book itself says what you do is that you, Dr. Alexander, had the experience of near-death, which took you to amazing places, which we have talked about in a previous interview. And you, Karen, have approached it from how do we bring that down to the world today? So tell us about this consciousness first, Dr. Alexander. Tell us what it is. Where are we trying to get to here?
Well, I think the important thing to understand is that no human being has ever known anything other than the inside of their own consciousness. And we tend to assume that we're conscious and that we're beings traveling in this world that's around us. But what we fail to realize, which quantum physics and modern studies of neuroscience is making very clear, is that there's a whole layer of organization in this universe, which is basically a top-down organizational set of principles that has everything to do with more fully understanding the nature of consciousness. And it's not just some trivial little epiphenomenon that might be arising among chemical reactions and electron fluxes in the brain. It's something far more than that. And that's what the deep mystery of quantum physics, the challenges of the hard problem of consciousness, really bring to the fore. And one thing that my journey showed me very clearly is the assumption that the brain creates consciousness out of physical matter is one that should be deeply questioned, because in fact, there's tremendous evidence that that is not the case. And I would say beginning about 2 years after my coma experience, I learned of a phenomenon called binaural beats. And that is exactly what has kind of taken my meditation practice by storm. That's when I met Karen Newell, was in November 2011, and I was just beginning to learn a lot more about this. But essentially, the binaural beats were a phenomenon discovered by a Prussian physicist back in the mid-1800s. He knew that if you presented a pure tone to one ear and a slightly different pure tone to the other ear, that somewhere in the brain you generate a signal that's equal to the arithmetic difference between those two tones.
Okay.
So, for example, giving 104 hertz and 100 hertz will give you a 4 hertz signal. But it's a way of getting at consciousness at a very primitive level. And I think that's why it has such an extraordinary capability of liberating our conscious awareness from the here and now and the myth of self.
Okay, so this is a doctor speaking, and I love it because this is exactly what's so beautiful about the two of you, for one thing, but also this journey is that there's a scientific explanation. You could talk about, these things you've just mentioned, which I can't even remember. And then Karen, you've got you creating sounds with different tools and vehicles to bring about the same understanding. So tell us about what you're doing with Sacred Acoustics.
Well, we create specialized sounds that are very much related to brainwave entrainment. So our brain is in a different state as we go throughout the day, and it can be measured with an EEG, which is just measuring the electric signal coming out of the brain. And numbers are associated with all of these states. So the beta state, that's the state we're in right now. We're walking, we're not walking, we're talking, we're
moving.
Yeah. And when you're walking, you're in a beta state.
Yeah.
But then that's roughly 12 to 30 hertz, the electric signal. But then lower than that, alpha is roughly 7 to 12 hertz. That's associated with dreaming, with relaxation, with focus. And then there's theta, roughly 4 to 7 or 8 hertz. That's associated with deep meditation and that hypnagogic state, that state between awake and asleep that we're all in when we're first waking up in the morning and falling asleep at night. And then delta is 0 to 4 hertz. That's what we're in at night when we're sleeping. That's what Eben was in when he had his coma, very, very low brain signal. And so what we do with these special tones that Eben was describing, you don't really have to know how they work. The trick is, how do they make you feel? What effect do they have? Yes. And what we're doing is bringing the brain from that beta state, the walking, talking, thinking state, into those lower states associated with dreams, with meditation, with relaxation. And that's exactly what the tones are doing by design.
You know, it's really interesting as you're talking, because we get so many emails from people who ask about meditation. There seems to be kind of a fascination with it right now. Mindfulness has become this, you know, sort of key word. It's almost like people are beginning to get it, that there's something that's accessible to them. They don't quite know how, but it's like there's something lifting up. And I don't know whether you felt this, Dr. Alexander, when you were when you came out of this, it was like, there's something shifting in the world a bit. Do you think that's true?
I think that's very much the case. And meditation is a tremendous doorway into kind of more deeply understanding ourselves. Again, the important concept here is your conscious awareness is not created de novo by the physical brain, by the 3.5 pounds of gelatinous mass sitting between your ears, but it's filtered in by that brain. But, you know, for example, very creative people like scientists, Thomas Alva Edison, the great inventor,
Einstein,
Albert Einstein,
right.
Louis Stevenson, Salvador Dali, Beethoven, they all had ways of getting into this kind of hypnagogic state. They knew the universe could give them what they were looking for in their creative efforts. They knew they were not going to use their rational, logical mind to think their way to those enlightened facts about the universe that they were trying to discern in their writings and what have you.
Right.
But this is the key, is the universe is there. That primordial mind does exist. And so many have found it as a source of creative inspiration. And mindfulness, or going within, is the way to fully discover our relationship with it. So this is really about just acknowledging the little voice in our head. That little voice, the ego, is not necessarily the only pathway towards knowledge.
Yeah, so you know, we talk about kind of accessing these different realms, you know, these different spiritual realms that are these levels of consciousness. So how does sound, the sound practices that you're working on, Karen, how does that lift you up? I mean, how does that chemically work? I mean, when you listen to, for example, that you combine sounds, human voice, nature, digital sounds, how does it simply take you to that theta space that you described earlier, and where does it take you?
Yes, well, everyone is going to respond differently, and so a lot of people want to know what's going to happen. And
exactly.
What's really interesting that I learned only in the last year or so is that our brains are incredibly unique. The EEG brainwave that comes out of our brain is actually so unique it can be used as fingerprints. That's how unique they are from one person to the next. Wow. So it's no surprise that our brains are all going to respond slightly differently to whatever tones are being delivered. But the general idea is that we want to drive your brainwave state into, I'll just use theta, into a theta state of awareness. We use different combinations of these frequencies, but by driving your brain to that theta state, that's what quiets the thinking mind. That's what really starts to profoundly relax you in ways that regular meditation, I know for me, was very intimidating. When I was starting to do it maybe 20 years ago, you know, it was intimidating because it was so related to Eastern kind of religious or spiritual traditions, which I wasn't necessarily wanting to go all gung-ho in on just to learn how to meditate. But we can approach this from a Western perspective without having to have all of that kind of spiritual dogma behind it. If that helps you, that's fine. But if it doesn't, you know, Eben talks about in quantum mechanics, that observer that is at the heart of every experiment. And in fact, they've done studies that based on the scientists' belief system, their expectations will actually influence the results of the experiment. That's that is exactly how powerful the observer is. And what I like to remind people is that observer is within each and every one of us. So by listening to the tones, by meditating, by quieting the thinking mind, we get in touch with that observer. And that is the most critical part of this process, is to understand there's another part of you that we don't normally have awareness of. And that's what the mechanics of this meditation can really help us do.
And that's what you saw when you were in this near-death experience. And what's really interesting, we talked earlier, Karen, about the fact that meditation traditionally is used to relax, to quiet the monkey mind, to calm yourself down. But the bigger goal, the bigger achievement is that you start to realize how connected you are, how your energy affects other people. And then I remembered a conversation I was mentioning to Dr. Alexander I had with Raymond Moody, who, the near-death experience researcher. And he said that one of the things that really struck him when people talked about the out-of-body experience was that they weren't thinking as themselves. They were thinking through the mind of the doctor. It was the most amazing comment he made. It was like people said that they weren't really thinking about their experience, but they were thinking, the doctor's thinking this. They suddenly started to feel like they were connected, not just physically, but mentally.
They become.
It's amazing. Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens in the life review too. I think Eben can speak to that in a becoming sense.
It's really, again, it's simply an expression of the notion that we're really sharing the dreams of the one mind, and we are all.
It's incredible to think about.
Another, we're truly hurting. That's one of the biggest travesties of our modern culture, completely sucker punched by the nonsense of the materialist mindset that says we're all separate, and that it's competition. This kind of a warped interpretation of Darwinian evolution, saying that it's all about competition, whereas most biologists today will tell you that success in the biological world is measured by collaboration and cooperation between members of a species and between species. And so we've completely misinterpreted some facts about this world and ignored the connection that we all share, that it is really through this loving force. And that's why I often say that the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, is actually written into the fabric of the universe in the form of life reviews, more than 25% of near-death experiences. So very important to understand that this is a shift of worldviews that has tremendous import to our ability to live together and take care of each other.
Now,
wouldn't that be good? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great if we could actually do that? But it's the crazy scientists who are going to save us here. We're going to get out of our logical minds, and the big thinkers are going to sort this out for us. But go ahead, Karen. I'm sorry.
No. We are not. Let me tell you, we are not going to wait around for those thinkers to tell us how the world works, because we know how it works. And us as individuals can start to experience this for ourselves without some institutional change. And I think as more of this kind of grassroots movement of people just saying, oh, that's nonsense, that it's birth to death and nothing more. Of course, we realize that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, whether you're religious or not. It becomes a secular kind of knowing. And as we do this, the scientists will have to catch up with us. So I want to put the power back into the hands of the people, into the hearts of the people, and make them realize that it's their birthright to know these things. And we don't need to wait around for doctors and scientists to tell us that it's true, although we love when they do. So.
Well, you are a perfect example, the two of you, how it can work together. Go ahead, Dr. Alexander.
Well, I was just going to say that, we've had several thousand years of trying to portray this message through religious and teaching of orthodoxies and what have you. The deep reality is that really hasn't worked so well for this world, even though I would say religions in many ways have brought oneness and love and compassion and mercy and kindness to their people. And if so, then they're doing what they're here to do. But religions have let us down is not really showing the world this is the way the entire world works. So it was always taking somebody else's opinion on faith. And this is why Karen and I stress so much going within. Each and every one of us as an individual soul has the power to go within, to make those choices, to explore consciousness and our relationship with the universe. And what we end up finding is very reassuring in terms of the oneness, the togetherness, that we're really here for each other, and that the whole world attitude will benefit from shifting dramatically on this point.
I'd like to just point out that on ebenalexander.com, there's something we call your 33-day journey into the heart of consciousness. And this is a completely free email course. Enter your email. We'll send you an email each day for 33 days. And each email focuses on a main concept from the book, Living in a Mindful Universe. It's truly a companion to the book, but you don't need the book to follow along. And we include a practical exercise each day on how that concept can be applied into your life. And we include some sacred acoustics recordings as well. So we encourage all your listeners to go sign up for that 33-day journey where you can leave comments. Over 7,000 people around the world.
That's wonderful.
And they leave their comments and they're helping each other. And it's a beautiful thing to see all the different minds coming together and having discussion about this.
It sounds wonderful. And you, by the way, your website is sacredacoustics.com, where you actually said that you've got a sample, a 20-minute download of music, a sound, not just music,
yes,
a sound.
Sacredacoustics.com. Sacredacoustics.com is focused only on the sound, and there's a link to the 33-day journey as well. But
sounds
there's also
great.
Training videos, all free, that people can use to learn how to use these recordings.
What's really interesting to me is you two are obviously very passionate, very, sort of forceful and confident. There are a lot of people out there who look at this going within as a very dangerous and scary, and, it's very tough. I mean, our lives are complicated. I mean, things have happened to people and, they just have lost all the confidence that you're exuding. But it's great to know that you are there on the journey with them. I mean, that's what I love about the tools you provided. So you were going to... Sorry, go ahead.
Let me just remind people, I was there too. I thought meditation was scary and not, useful and all of those things. And so I had to really work at doing it. But what I would really love to point out to your listeners is that if you think you don't have time and your life is so crazy and you just can't work it in, what's so fascinating is that anyone who spends time focused on their inner world starts to notice that their outer world begins to shift in ways they couldn't possibly imagine. And that's without any hard effort and doing. Just by getting more aligned with your inner essence and feeling that part of you, your outer world will begin to shift in amazing ways.
Okay, Eben, last words here.
Well, I think the most important thing is that every soul is involved in this. I like to think that the reason for all life in this universe, in fact, the reason the whole universe exists, is for sentient beings to make these discoveries that concern, getting more into who am I? And who am I is really a question about this entire universe.
Right.
The more we can all investigate, go deep within to find these incredible answers of connection and oneness and of love and of kindness with others, the more the world will absolutely shift for the better. World peace, we often look at as such a unobtainable goal, and yet I would say that the ingredients are right there for world peace and for tremendous harmony and health coming into the lives of every individual who opens their mind to this very refreshing and liberating worldview.
Well, the two of you are total inspiration to me, and I know to our viewers as well. I'm sure that they will check out your websites, ebenalexander.com and sacredacoustics.com. And if you've got any questions, leave them in the section below the video here. And I'd like to continue this conversation at a later point. I would really love to get feedback from people and maybe come back to you with some questions that have come up, because I've just thoroughly enjoyed our chat today. Thank you. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our Life After Death YouTube channel and visit our website at lifeafterdeath.com. We are a community of people who are fascinated by the topic of life after death and subjects like near-death experience, the afterlife, reincarnation, and spirituality. Together, we are exploring and discovering these topics together with curiosity and an open heart.